Ba 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 da 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 da. Hello and welcome to ZiggyD's dodgy action RPG gaming news show. We have lots of action RPG news happening at the moment. We have a lot to talk about today. There's Path of Exile news, there's last Epoch news, there's news for other games. We've got December events coming for Path of Exile. Lots of good stuff coming in action RPG land. The genre close to many of our hearts, I am sure. Let's take a look at the news. Yes, this is the marathon money went to building this studio. I hope you like it. It's two mics. I do. Hello, folks. First things first, we have some Path of Exile news. December is the days for events for Path of Exile. We have many events happening in Path of Exile land. After a league that that people didn't play all that much, I think. Some people didn't play all that much. It's good to have some good fun stuff to look forward to in December before the new league launches next year. Since the schedule has been kind of thrown off, I think they wanted to make sure that it had some cool stuff to do in December, since the new league doesn't come out until next year. So we have a whole bunch of stuff coming. Some is familiar and some stuff is new. So we have full details of the schedule now and the events. There has been some teasers prior to now, but starting with December 3rd, we have an Endless Delve event. Now, this one has ran before. I missed it, so I'm looking forward to playing it this time around. But basically, we make a character that starts off in Delve and can only do Delve to go as far as you can. And there is a whole bunch of different rewards for reaching different level tiers. If we go down here a little bit, you can see that for reaching level 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 90, and 95, there is different MTXs that you can win. Everything from 60 onwards is like a chance to win one of like 3,000 things, so on and so forth. But everyone who gets to level 50 gets a mystery box at the very least. So you get a little constellation prize if you at least make it to that. Also, for the top 5 of each class, there is, I'm pretty sure, a brand new Demigods item, a bigger sword, which gives 30% rarity to you and nearby allies. That's actually rather interesting. Cool to see some new Demigods stuff. Lots of MTXs up for the grabs and things like that, but Endless Delve is, much like what it sounds like, it's a lot of delving. There is some key differences because Delve has been reworked since the last time this event was ran, and I did a bit of delving this league, and Delve is really, really nice now. So, kind of ace. Kicking December off with some Endless Delve, I think, is fun. I would have liked to have seen the event kind of cycle, like where these events were, maybe shuffled around a little bit, but still very cool stuff. We'll get to that and explain why in a little bit. But Endless Delve stuff, not too much to say. You go down, you delve as far as you can, and hopefully have a good time. There is obviously no going into maps and stuff like that. You can still ascend. You just automatically ascend upon reaching certain levels. You gain access to like the altar you can click on and then ascend. I didn't play it last time, but I understood that's how it works. So on December 8th, towards the end of this, because this runs for 10 days, at December 8th, there is a one-day battle royale, and there's 3 of these through the course of December. And this time, the Brutus that appeared in the recent Royale event that streamers only did will be appearing as well. So a boss that wanders around and murderizes people, and if people can take him down, he drops a lot of cool stuff. So a bit of Royale action. I do enjoy the Royale, and I'll be trying to get on for those to either play or cast a bunch of matches for them, because it's good fun, especially when it's compressed down into a single date, because that's when you get people getting on to play. The problem with Royale was when it's just on 24/7, you find people, or just on even like for every weekend or something like that, you find people not getting together at the same time, and thus it's hard to get matches. But with everyone being on for the one day, it should be easy to get lots of matches, so that should be good fun. But if you didn't see the recent event, the little Brutus spin of having a cool boss that goes around murderizing people is good fun. Now, because these run for 10 days, but after 7 days, it kind of like tapers off, so the people that are still really enjoying Delve can continue playing it, but then the next event kicks in, and I kind of like this. They've done this for all of them, where each of the events last for 10 days, but the next event starts 7 days later. So if you're like done with Delve after 5 or 6 or 7 days, the next event is just around the corner, and maybe you got a Royale in between as well. So then we've got Zizzarin's Gauntlet event, which has historically been all about being hyper challenging, super difficult, ridiculous modifiers, including monster life speed. In this case, we have multiple projectiles and massive area of effect increases and health for bosses. So super challenging events if you want to play something absolutely brutal. Yeah, this one's +4 projectiles and like 70% AoE or something. So absolutely brutal. So that is certainly an option on December 10th, which just happens to coincide with the new Last Epoch update. So you'll have to make a choice about what you're going to be playing on December 10th, and I'll have to make a choice then too. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the news. As you can see, I've got a bunch of news queued up at the top of the screen here. But December 10th is when the Gauntlet event kicks off, and that has its own set of rewards as well through various sponsors and stuff like that, PCs, shirts, as well as the MTXs and all that sort of stuff as well. So lots of action there. You can check out some of the like reveals that Ziz has done on that, kind of covering that as well. So, and then if we go back up here on the 17th, so towards the end of the Gauntlet event, as it begins to taper off, we have a brand new event, Endless Heist. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, rather than Endless Delve, you'll be just heisting. You'll start off with 2 contracts, and at the end of each contract, there's a container that drops extra contracts. So you'll be able to chain heist non-stop throughout the whole thing. How that's going to play out? No idea. Super exciting to see how it goes. Yes, these Endless Delves and Endless Heists is not necessarily everyone's thing, but they are completely unique Path of Exile gameplay experiences. Like, what if you didn't have to play the campaign? People complain all the time about having to play the campaign again and again for new rerolls. Well, what if you could level through Heist? You'll be able to try that out. What if you could level through Delve? You'll be able to try that out here. So, very cool stuff. And I imagine if you're a big proponent of the alternate to campaign leveling process ideas, showing up for these events and having a good time and communicating how you have a good time might be a good way to kind of just gently nudge GGG in that direction in the future. I think it's a bit of a long shot, but worth it, and certainly fun to see how the game plays with different restrictions. In this case, heavily restricted content. I actually find that super interesting in action RPGs. Whenever you have heavily restricted content, the meta of how you play the game changes dramatically. I even like things like you can only play Act 1, and that's all. Path of Exile is restricted to only Act 1. How high a level can you get in just Act 1? What sort of builds do people make out of just Act 1 characters? I find that stuff super interesting, so I like to explore things like that, and Endless Heist and Endless Delve are a bit of that action. And then we have some pretty crazy stuff starting December 24th, so the day before Christmas, or Christmas Day, I think, for Australians. We have Atlas Invasion, in which map bosses will be everywhere. So, horrors from other worlds have invaded through the map device and are rampaging through Rayclass. The event works much more like a normal Path of Exile League than previous events, but every area, other than Twilight Strand, contains 5 endgame map bosses who are eager to turn you into mints. Now, it doesn't say whether that includes things like Maven and Shaper and Elder and stuff, or whether it's just regular map bosses. But we've had we've had Invasion where there was like 10 invasion monsters in there and things like that. And those are kind of like mini bosses. We've had Beyond demons spawning everywhere and Exiles. And those events are always super crazy, but also super fun. There's usually tons of loot as well as tons of just crazy situations going on where you, in this case, there'll probably be situations where in small zones, it just so happens that you're facing 3 map bosses at the exact same time while you're progressing. It does actually say Shaper, does it? 5 endgame boss. Where does it? Oh, wait, hold on. Any boss that can be witnessed by the Maven can potentially appear. So try not to let temptation go to your head when its Shaper shows up in the mud flats. Oh, okay. So anything that Maven can witness, so not Cyrus, but Shaper and Elder will be included, as well as Adziri, because they can be witnessed as well, right? Well, that's pretty exciting. They're guaranteed to drop unique items as well. Another thing I didn't mention is for the Endless Heist and Delve things, they start off a little differently because you get a series of starting uniques that you can use as well, which is pretty fun. If you click on that little link in the Delve thing there's like a whole bunch of these different things, which they did in the past with like Descent Champions, where you started off with different uniques. And some of these can be, fun for leveling, and some of them could be something you even use on your character like long term as well. So unique build opportunities as well as fun goobery leveling action, as well as Cortex Boss. Cortex Boss. That does sound like some shenanigans indeed. And then, on the 22nd, just before this one starts, so at the end of Endless Heist is another Royale event. And then we have Delirium Everywhere from December 31st. So the end of the month into the new year, before the new league kicks off. And probably around this time, I imagine we'll be getting new league spoilers and reveals and stuff like that. We'll be able to actually have something to play during that period, which is kind of cool, because a lot of the time it's like the new reveals have happened, but you want to play, but you kind of don't, because it's not the new content. You know. Sure, we've all been in that situation, but we'll have some Delirium Everywhere, which is just Delirium everywhere, which might result in some interesting situations where you like ranging randomly from 1 to 100% Delirium. So if you like randomly go into a zone with 100% Delirium, that can actually be pretty brutal, because that's huge in terms of how much more challenging and tanky monsters get. We've made sure campaign areas where you have to kill certain monsters aren't too crazy, mostly. Very reassuring, thank you. So that one is like a little bit less exciting, but something to do. Something to do. Just fog everywhere. Yeah, it's like the Delirium Orbed maps, where the fog is set to a certain level, and it's just like that for the whole zone. So the best thing about that is there's no timer. You know, it's not like the mirror where you have to kill as much stuff as you can before the mirror wears off. In this case, it's just the Delirium is active all the time. So it's just thicker, juicier, more oppressive Path of Exile action to play, but also prizes for all those as well. So lots of MTXs to potentially get. If you jump into each of these events and make like a level 60, 70 character, you're probably going to win something. And then at the start of each of these events, there's going to be Twitch drops on Twitch as well. There's a portal for each one. So Arcane Voidgate, Wrangler, Temple, Malachite, Divine Demon. Portal effects available, so the dates are there, but it's the first date of each event. So you can jump on, watch the streamers getting murderized in the new events, and get some rewards. Yes, so yeah, you have to watch for like 2 hours, so pretty easy to do. And there's some FAQ, but that is the summation of it. Lots of fun events. I'm particularly excited to have a little bit of a look at Endless Delve, maybe Endless Heist, as well as some Royale events personally. The Atlas Invasion could be very fun. Unfortunately, the Gauntlet event does time out with one of our later pieces of news, the last Epoch updates, which also look very exciting. But it's a good problem to have. We have too much action RPG stuff happening in December. Very good problem to have. So, we have other game news. There's other action RPGs, did you know? Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr / Prophecy is an action RPG set in the Warhammer 40k universe. You may have seen it at various points. It launched and wasn't very good when it first launched, but it had a big 2.0 update when Prophecy came out, or just before then, and it got really quite good, and I played a bunch of it with 2.0 and Prophecy, and it was actually kind of a banger. I had a lot of fun with it. There's been a lot of updates since then that I haven't checked out. Other content added to the game, various seasons. The game does its own seasons. And then we have announced just now, coming in the new year, so not in December, but in the new year, we have a new class coming out, the Adeptus Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. Very cool. Sick art, hey? So it sounds like this is just a new class to play. Not quite like Prophecy, which had a new campaign, but I imagine it's quite likely that it at least has a starting scenario campaign like Prophecy had. So there probably is a little bit of stuff there, because when we played Prophecy, the new class was the Adeptus Mechanicus class, and it had its own kind of unique background and starting to the campaign where it eventually joined up with the original one. And the quality of that was actually way better than the original campaign, so I enjoyed that a lot more playing the new class through the new campaign stuff. So hopefully we get more of that here. So that's pretty cool. I did do a video, actually. Thank you, RoboDude. I did do a video on 2.0 here. I forgot about that. I did do a video on 2.0 and Prophecy here, back when it came out, if you wanted to check that out. I forgot about it. Very, very good. Yes, and I was in cosplay even. Look at me go. So there is a bit of that there. But yeah, if you wanted some sci-fi action RPG, it's actually quite worth checking out now since 2.0 came out. And even since then, there's been a lot of other updates. So I might be jumping back on to check out the new class and a lot of the other new updates that have happened and been added to the game since we last checked it out. So that's pretty cool stuff. Grim Dawn is a game that the developers said they were done developing a few years ago. They said they were done developing, and but then they just kept doing it. They kept doing it. Yeah, I don't use my voice changer that much anymore. Sorry. You like the voice changer? I used to use the voice changer a lot. I have it, but I just haven't really messed with it very much. So Grim Dawn devs have just kept going. They just kept going. So there's been lots of little updates and balance changes and stuff that I haven't covered kind of over the past year or two. And they promised no new content, but they have actually been adding new content, including some of the biggest patches they've ever done. But the current newest news is that the game is actually coming to Xbox on December 3rd. So that's only in a couple days. But that is cool if you like a bit of couch action RPG action. It's a bit of a banger of a game to go to console. I'm always impressed when a really cool action RPG goes to console. And I don't know how Crate will handle the transition to console, how well that will go, but hopefully well. And as far as devs go, if I can trust any devs to really put a lot of effort into making it work as well as possible, Crate is a dev that I've come to trust because they've just always exceeded expectations, right? They've just always exceeded expectations. Grim Dawn, when they first showed Grim Dawn, I was like, seems like a bit of a cash-in for fans of, what was the original game? Titan Quest. It seems like maybe just a bit of a cash-in on Titan Quest. I was very wrong. Sorry for that. That was kind of my initial thoughts. I was like, oh yeah, it's actually kind of alright in its own right. And then it got better and better and better and better, and now it's actually quite the banger of a game. So very cool stuff. In other action RPG news, Soldak Entertainment, who is, you may not know, maybe you haven't heard of if you've watched my stream a lot. I have covered some Soldak games in the past, but Soldak is an indie dev who makes very unique action RPGs, and I really like because they push the genre in different directions. In particular, blending action RPGs with elements of 4X strategy games. Zombicide was one of my favorites for that. But the new Drox Operative, I played the original Drox, and I've been playing this a bit over the past couple of days, is out now, fully released recently, and it is set in space. You're an agent of your Drox Operative, I guess, and you go around kind of interacting with different races and species and getting them to form alliances or breaking their alliances, manipulating them, sowing seeds of chaos, doing missions and quests for them, as well as for the secretive Drox organization. And it kind of is like you're a single person playing and messing with the events of a larger 4X grand strategy game. So imagine like Civilization, but you're like an individual agent who goes around messing with the different factions. So there's like a whole bunch of different win conditions like 4X games have. There's like political victories and financial, economic victories and stuff like that you can do. So I'll be streaming this later today, checking it out a bit. They're not the prettiest games. They're a little bit rough around the edges, but they are very unique and push the action RPG genre in super interesting ways. Very interesting games, super creative dev. So well worth checking out. And then we have a lot of news for Last Epoch. We have a lot of news for Last Epoch. I'm going to drink my coffee for a sec. Hold on.
A legendary lie. Have you come here to save us? Or to take what is mine? For what I've discovered in the depths of this shrine,
Milk, yes.
to become a true legend requires something more than time.
Oh. They've done a good job of getting some hype for updates, huh? They've made updates quite the event to their beta. So Last Epoch, if you haven't been following it, it's probably the biggest action RPG that's kind of in the works, the biggest up-and-coming action RPG, and many people have been kind of getting sold on it for various reasons, whether it's crafting or the developer's approach to various different things. But super cool devs. I talk to them all the time, actually. They're super interactive and open to feedback and stuff like that, and they've been developing a very interesting action RPG. It still has a ways to go, and there is currently no multiplayer yet, but they do have plans for it, and it's going to be challenging for them 100% to make a big online, because they're ambitious. they're making an ambitious action RPG here. It's going to be super challenging for them, but I look forward to seeing how they go with it, and I'm super interested in a lot of what they're doing. But they've been making these updates, and they've been making them pretty big events, where these updates are sizable, adding new stuff, reworking old stuff. They haven't been afraid to go back and change some major things. And the new patch 0.84, which is named Eternal Legends, has been pretty major as well. Grace, yo, thanks for the T3 sub, mate, appreciate it. So, what do we have coming in this update, which is on December 10th, which you may have saw earlier, is the same date as the Gauntlet event. So you might have to choose. Are you going to play some Gauntlet, or are you going to check out the new Last Epoch update? Of course, on one hand, the Last Epoch update, you can check it out later and play the Gauntlet event. So that's one option. But let's have a little bit of a look at what we've got on offer here. So we have a major Druid rework, one of the classes, the shape-shifting class. So if you've always been a fan of Druids and shape-shifting, they're doing a lot here, and I actually really like especially what they're doing with making some kind of more unique shape-shifting opportunities here, like the Swarmblade and the Spriggan in particular I found super interesting, because like werebear stuff is pretty classic, right? It's a pretty classical Druid turning into a bear or a wolf or something like that, you know? But the Swarmblade and the Spriggan are pretty unique. We've got some new skills, we've got spear reworks and things like that, and new models and stuff like that, but probably the biggest change in this is actually the crafting overhaul, which we'll go over in a second. Because the crafting is a huge part of Last Epoch, and it's also a huge selling point for the game for a lot of people, I think, as well, who either want to see crafting approached differently to Path of Exile, or just happen to like how Last Epoch is approaching crafting. But before that, let's have a little bit of a look at the werebear. So they have all their own unique skills and mechanics and things like that. So I'm not going to read the entire post, but they go through like the various resources and stuff like that. But the visuals are pretty cool. Look at that. Yeah, sick. Pretty sick stuff. So it goes over various different skills here. So like the basic swipe attack, war cries, and I have to say, like, something about Last Epoch is that I think visually and skills and a little bit of the audio stuff has not really quite hit the mark over the course of its development. Like mechanically and systems and even gameplay is quite fun, but a lot of the like visuals and skills have kind of just not quite been there, but they're getting there. They're getting there, and I keep seeing them put out patches that I'm like, oh yeah, that's starting to look pretty good now. So they're getting there. I was a little bit unsure for a while. I was like, oh man, are they going to be able to like make it look and feel really good? Because the sound and the visual impact of a skill is just huge in action RPGs. You need to feel like the skills are really popping off. But they're getting there. A lot of the skills that they've reworked and improved the visuals on have looked a lot better. And then you've got like this stuff is, I'm like, man, it actually looks pretty sick. Look at this guy charging through the monsters there and they're exploding. I'm like, actually looking pretty sick. So it goes into some detail on the skill tree and stuff like that. If you haven't seen Last Epoch skill trees, every single skill has its own unique skill tree, which allows you to customize and change skills in very dramatic ways. So in this case, it looks like the charge skill has been made to have lightning strikes follow you around, things like that. So pretty epic stuff. But there's also the Spriggan, which is all about obviously nature magic, as you'd expect. We got some cool concept art, and then the look of it, I'm like, oh, that actually looks sick. Look how cool this guy looks. Yes. After Last Epoch, can I share an Action RPG's hiring page? Absolutely, Ames, do it now. I'll add it to the news. This is live news, live and unscripted news. So you got some news for Action RPGs you want to share in chat? I'll put it on the news show. Let's go. So we got some new transformation animations. A lot of this is visual, but there's also a lot of mechanical and skill reworks here to make things much more epic and interesting. So this seems like a huge leap forwards for how cool the Druid is overall. But I like the Spriggan, and I especially like the next one because they feel a lot more unique to me, a lot fresher to me. Do you enjoy idle RPGs? I've been getting a little bit more into idle games. I'm currently consumed with Melville Idle, which I'm playing right now in the background. I'm smithing some Dragonite bars right now. I've been consumed by Melville Idle of late. We got some Thorn Shield action, Summon Healing Totem, and Summon Vines. So the Totem stuff's getting a little bit of extra love as well, which is cool to see. I've played a bit of Druid action in the past, especially like totems and things like that. And they were pretty solid builds, but excited to see them get some visual upgrades as well as some skill tree reworks and new skills and things like that as well. Vine is substantial. But the coolest one, though, is, in my opinion, the Swarm Blade, which I don't think I've ever seen like a transformation, insect transformation like this. So here's the Swarm Blade. Look at this. That is pretty cool. That is creepy and very unique. I don't think I've seen an action RPG do like an insect transformation class. But that is very cool, right? Yeah. That's badass, right? You got your like scythe arms, so you can kind of already imagine how it plays just looking at it, which is super awesome. But you've got like very agile kind of like scything, swarm blade skills, arm blade slashes, various different combinations. Mobility obviously being pretty key, so having like a diving slash, as well as summoning other insects, right? Yeah, because obviously you're like a queen or a leader of the swarm or something like that. I immediately think Scyther as well, Pokemon. So you got that, and you got like Swarm Strike here, which is like a bunch of insects buzzing around you, kind of hitting things or something like that. Looks very cool. Looks very cool. So kind of a little bit reminds me of the Blade Dancer as well, which is one of the rogue classes and skill sets that came out somewhat recently, which was a new high for Last Epoch skill design, but also Action RPG skill design. I was really impressed. So I hope to see a similar level of quality with this. Because if you haven't played the Blade Dancer stuff, it kind of blew my mind how good it was. Because I was even like, wow, this actually like does stuff that I haven't seen other action RPGs do, weaving mobility with the skill usage a lot more. Skills that have like built-in movement to them really change the dynamics of gameplay. So I hope this kind of taps into that same feeling a little bit. But pretty cool stuff. Multi-form support. Okay, I didn't actually see this part, but you've got a werebear transitioning to the insect form as well. So you can swap between forms for different skill usage. So that's pretty interesting to see if there'll be like hybrid form builds or something like that. Pretty sick. Pretty sick. So there we've got the Spriggan transforming into a bear and vice versa. Very cool. But the other big change is pretty huge because, and somewhat unexpected really, is EHG were willing to jump back in and reevaluate the entire crafting system, which is pretty wild. So the crafting system for Last Epoch historically has been one where you break down items to get shards, which are affixes. So you might say like life on an item can turn into a shard that you can store away. And then you can apply that shard to another item to add life to an item or increase the tier of that life. And you could take basic items that have nothing on them and then add whatever affixes you wanted to, making them higher and higher in tiers, risking the item breaking as you proceeded. And that was the key. And it honestly worked pretty well, but people weren't super happy with it. And there was certainly some feels bad man moments from it, where you have a very high percentage chance of success if you've ever played like a tactics game or something where it's like you have 99% chance to hit. And you're like, oh man, that's good because if I don't hit this shot, it's going to ruin my whole mission for whatever reason. And then you miss, you know? Yeah, XCOM'd. Classic XCOM situation where you have 99% chance of success feels like 100% chance of failure. 99% equals 50-50. Yeah, basically. Sometimes it feels like that, right? And the crafting system ultimately had a bit of that too. And I thought it was good enough that they could have kept going with this crafting system and just tweaking things and stuff like that. And it would have been a pretty awesome and unique crafting system. It allowed high degree of control. Would have been very interesting to see how that impact trade, because when you have a very powerful crafting system, because it is an extremely powerful crafting system, you can make, to an extent, the exact item that you want to make. The only question is exactly how powerful we'll get. But that risk-reward stuff worked ultimately fairly well, and I think would have been good enough. And I think, well, maybe a lot of devs would have just been happy with that, to continue tweaking that system. But they've gone back to the drawing board a bit and completely changed it. And I don't know, but it seems good. So now, rather than the chance of failure in the item shattering and having that cracking sound and that really feels bad man moment, now you'll find items that have a certain amount of crafting potential. So you'll always know from the outset exactly how far you can take an item. Okay, so I'm not quite right. Thank you, chat. the forging potential consumed is different. Different crafts might consume different amounts of forging potential. Okay. Forging potential normally around 1 to 15, and when an item runs out of forging potential, let's break it down a little bit because I haven't had a chance to read all of this yet. It can no longer be crafted on, but until then, all crafts will be successful. So there's no failed crafts, but there is a limit to how far you can take an item. Now, the other thing that already existed was purple items that had higher tiers of access when you could craft, and that was a really good idea because it meant that dropped items had a lot of relevance still, because you could find items that had tiers higher than what you could possibly craft, and those would make excellent crafting bases because their potential obviously then is a lot higher. Let's say you find an item that has tier 7 life when the maximum that you can craft is normally tier 5. So you get your tier 7 life item, and then you try and craft the best possible other affixes on it. But obviously the risk there of like destroying the item and things rolling backwards was concerning. And it sounds like those items now will have higher crafting potentials on higher forging potential. All crafts are random within a range. Okay, let's have a little bit of a man read word session then, actually. Let's break this down, huh? So they go through the advantages of the forging potential system. So clear expectations, softening the blow. It doesn't feel as bad when the item cracks and is destroyed. And then rather than there being negative RNG, the concept of there being more positive RNG. So like you get those win moments. You had that a little bit with the previous system because you could get the double craft moments where they added it a while back where you might be trying to take an affix from tier 3 to tier 4, but it jumps to tier 5. So that was like that positive RNG. And so they seem to be leaning towards that. I think they realized that people really liked that. So they're, yeah, I will give this a more thorough read. Apologies, I didn't do that sooner. Well, we'll give this a more thorough read now so we understand it a bit more because it is pretty fundamental. It's huge. It's a big part of Last Epoch's itemization system is the crafting because unlike, say, Path of Exile, where not everyone interacts with crafting, I think pretty much everyone will interact with crafting in Last Epoch. It's a bit different there, I think. The crafting is more fundamental to the game in a way. Okay, so it seems like they've shifted things towards that more positive RNG. Another thing was here, I have read through this section, but magic versus rare items. In some cases, magic items were better to craft on. Rather than a rare item. Now, the risk with a rare item is it has affixes on there already that you don't want. But if you find a rare item that has good affixes, it should be a better base to craft on. So they're trying to help that by making sure that rare items will have higher crafting potential or higher forging potential. So we're planning to solve this with the glyphs of chaos that can be used to reroll affixes when they're upgraded, giving you several shots of changing an affix to one you want. So for other ways of changing the rare items as well. Where does it say about the rare things, the rares being higher? Where was this? I saw I read that somewhere. That might be a little bit later or earlier. Okay, so what have we got here? There were only 2 glyphs, and they both extended the average number of times you could craft the item. So glyphs are modifier items you can add into the craft to change the way it functions in some way. So they're changing basically all of those and adding new ones, it seems. Either by reducing the instability added, or by reducing fracture chance. There was no opportunity cost to using one of these, so there wasn't as much of an advantage to starting from an item that required particularly few crafts to complete. We're aiming to solve this by introducing new glyphs that allow you to push an item further or refine it at an opportunity cost of not using a glyph that could preserve forging potential. For example, you can use the glyph of order to preserve a good roll you get on a lower tier and carry that forward to higher tiers. So, prevents the roll of an affix within its range changing when it is upgraded. So that sounds like the divine aspect of it, like the roll range. If you roll in the higher range, it'll preserve that higher range as you move it up through the tiers, it sounds like. So that's pretty interesting. If you roll good on a lower tier roll, you can carry that forwards. But obviously being an opportunity cost, you can't use a different glyph. Interesting. Rare items started with more instability. Here we go, this is what I was talking about earlier. Rare items started with more instability than magic items, so the gap between their mod count and their total tiers could be closed more easily. We're flipping that around with the new crafting system so that rare items start with more forging potential than magic items. So magic items will still have a place because they're more malleable. You can, if it's got, there's more chance that the 2 affix that a magic item has or the 1 affix will be the ones you want. Keeping in mind, Last Epoch has 4 affixes on items. So they're more malleable, so that's kind of the advantage there. So a rare being in a way less malleable because it maybe has 3 or 4 affixes, and one of those might not be what you want. But the potential there is higher if the rares have the affixes you want. They are better crafting bases in that case, which they kind of already implicitly are, but they want to double down on that, it seems like. So here we've got a white item with 15 forging potential, because this is a blank slate, right? You can put literally anything on this. You can put the 4 perfect affixes you want, but how far you can take that will be lower. The magic item will have some tiers of affixes already, and if those are what you want, you can then add to them. It's got higher forging potential, 20 in this case, and then you can take those further. So it's kind of a double whammy, because more forging potential means you can take it further, but also, if you already want to melee cold damage on this, then that's already there, so that kind of saves you some as well. It saves you some crafts, effectively. So it's actually higher than the 20 listed, because these represent some forging potential already instilled in the item, right? And then we've got rares with even higher forging potential and more affixes and potentially more tiers and stuff like that. We also want to shield players from bad RNG when crafting on exalted items, as that process is inherently more risky due to exalted items being much less easily replaceable. Good exalted items can be quite rare. Because of this, exalted items drop with particularly high forging potential. So we've got 34 and 41 forging potential here. And these are the exalted affixes, which are like tier 6 or 7, much higher ranges. The difference between tier 6 and 7 and tier 5 is really big as well in many cases. Even to the point where, I can't remember specific numbers, but it might be like an affix that at tier 5 gives you +1 to all fire skills or something. At tier 7 can give you +2, which is obviously a huge boost. If you have some action RPG and Path of Exile familiarity, that will be familiar. So higher forging potential with the exalted items, in addition to one of the affixes being exalted. Runes and glyphs. We're swapping old 2 glyphs for 4 new ones, replacing 1 rune and adding 2 new runes. 3 of these new crafting items will be chase items with more exciting and powerful potential outcomes than the existing runes and glyphs. That's twice as much. Whoa! It is. One of our goals with overhauling glyphs was to make the decision around choosing the one you wanted to be based more on strategy and what sort of outcome you wanted, rather than the math of which was more likely to result in you being able to craft the item further. Kablemo, thanks for the sub, mate. On account of that, the roles of the Glyph of the Guardian and Glyph Stability have been rolled into the new Glyph of Hope, which gives a chance to craft or consume no forging potential. So that's, you get a free craft. So the idea here is that they want to make a bit more of an opportunity cost between doing that, which is the like basic. If you're doing nothing, you're doing that, right? Because you want a chance that you can effectively get a bonus craft and take the item further. So that's the baseline of what you're always doing if you have the resources available. But now there's other options as well that you might want to consider. So Glyphs of Chaos rerolls an affix when you upgrade it. This means that rare items with 1 or 2 affixes you don't want become much more viable bases for crafting. So it sounds like it rerolls one of the existing affixes when you upgrade and add another affix, or when you upgrade that affix. Oh, I think it's when you upgrade that affix. That's interesting. How does that work? It almost sounds like kind of annulling or removing an affix and then re-adding a new one, but it seems to work a little differently. Not sure I fully understand that yet. Glyph of Chaos also solves another problem with the old crafting system, which was that shards of affixes you didn't want could feel completely useless. So you'll now want to have at least a few of every shard on hand so you can reroll their respective affixes. Aha! Okay, so let's say there's stun or something on an item that you don't really care about, like stun recovery or whatever. If you have a stun recovery shard and then a Glyph of Chaos, you can upgrade the stun recovery, which is not something you would do, right? Normally, in the old system, you would just leave it because it's like, I don't care about that, so I'm not going to waste any crafting effort on the affix I don't care about. But in this case, you can upgrade the stun recovery, use a Glyph of Chaos, and it'll turn into something else. That's super exciting. So that's like, to put that in Path of Exile terms, since it's kind of an easier reference for more of us, it's like an Exalted Orb that would target the specific affix that you wanted, but then change it into something else. So add, remove, fire from Harvest. A bit like that, yes, for sure. So in this case, you exalt your stun recovery 1 tier higher, although that's not exactly how exalts work, but you upgrade the stun recovery and maybe it turns into something far more useful, like a resistance or something like that. It is a little bit like Harvest, Remove, Add, but guaranteeing to upgrade the tier as well. So you're upgrading the tier and it's going to turn into something else, and hopefully that something else is useful. In many cases, an affix is just complete dud and completely useless to you, so the chance of turning into something useful is very cool. And it means if the affix is like tier 2, you have like 3 chances to turn it into something else.
This sounds like Harvest, but better.
Well, that's kind of the thing is when Harvest was coming out, we were kind of like talking about the fact that Last Epoch's crafting system is... there was a few things that Harvest did that Last Epoch's crafting system couldn't do, but that seems to... Some of the gap there is being bridged a little bit. But yes, Last Epoch's crafting system is extremely powerful in similar ways to the way Harvest was. But yes, you have a high degree of control over the items you produce with the crafting system, and that seems to be getting enhanced here as well. So Runes of Shattering and Rune of Refinement are not changing. We like the role they played in the old crafting system. They continue to work just well. As discussed above, the Rune of Removal could lead to moments of frustration when it removes one affix that made the item exciting for you in the first place. Of course, the Glyph of Chaos provides an alternative now, but if you want to use the Rune of Removal, the edge will be taken off the disappointment because it'll return a number of shards of the affix equal to its tier. Oh, that actually makes sense. That's cute. So the Rune of Removal is like an annul, removes one specific affix. Well, non-specific affix, one affix randomly. But in this case, you actually get those shards so you could use them in the future. If you accidentally remove a good one, and it's a rare affix that you wanted, like +1 level to skeletons or something, you'll get those shards so that you can craft another item with them later. So that's a nice little consolation prize, I guess. But now with the Glyph of Chaos, that seems like a much stronger, much less risky way of serving a similar purpose. Rune of Shattering's just take an item and harvest shards from it randomly. So if you find an item with good affixes, but it's not a very good item, then you can shatter them to claim. And that's one of the primary sources of getting good affixes. The other is just random drops. Rune of Shaping will no longer favor moderate rolls, making it more exciting to use and giving it more potential to create really powerful items. We felt comfortable doing this because the new system, we can simply balance it by giving it a higher maximum forging potential cost. So they have another lever to pull here with balance, which is interesting. Rune of Discovery, this is a new rune. It costs no forging potential and adds random tier 1 affixes to all empty affix slots on an item. So this is kind of like an alchemy orb in that it just turns an item into one with all of its affixes. A little bit different though, because you can use it on an item that already has affixes. So you find an item that has, you know, a good affix. I'm guessing it could turn a magic into a rare then. Probably would. So you use it on like a magic item with one affix that's a good affix you want, and you just use the Rune of Discovery to add random other stuff. So the interesting thing here is normally that's not very good. That's not very, I'll go back, sorry. That's not very good because usually you want to add the specific affixes you want, but now with the Glyphs of Chaos, you can potentially change those out. So, but it is, I think the kind of key thing here is that it's cheaper, it doesn't cost forging potential. It might be pretty good for leveling as well, if these are like pretty common while leveling. That could be kind of nice for leveling, for just like filling out items with affixes and, you know, maybe getting half of the ones is good. Elmia, thanks for the sub. So apparently I missed a second detail in the Rune of Removal. What did I miss with the Rune of Removal? So I need to more easily craft that affix onto a different item instead. Also opens up the strategy of using multiple runes of removal instead of a Rune of Shattering if you want to maximize the number of shards you get from an item. Oh, okay. So if an item is particularly valuable with the affixes, you could use multiple runes of removal. So shatterings give you a random number of affixes and not necessarily the ones you want. Sounds like shatterings will be a much more consistent but more expensive way of like picking apart an item to get the affixes you want. Interesting. Okay. Thanks for the sub, Elmia. So Rune of Discovery seems to have interesting potential for leveling, but also for like kind of more budget crafting. So that's cool. Rune of Ascendance, the first of 3 chase crafting items. So these are the big ones. This transforms an item into a random unique or set of the same type. So this is your ancient orb then. The subtype does not matter, just the item type. Okay. That also means you have less control though. So it turns like boots into a pair of unique boots, but not the specific base boots. For example, using a Rune of Ascendance on a silver ring can result in any unique or set ring that could randomly drop, but cannot result in a unique helmet. Yes, okay. But it also means it won't necessarily give you a unique silver ring, it sounds like. That's what I'm taking from this, at least. That's what it sounds like. It's not going to give you necessarily a unique silver ring, but a unique ring. Same item category, but not same item base. Subtype does not matter, yeah. So it could turn it into a unique gold ring. Yeah, okay, cool. Clarified in the example in the image. Where? Yeah? Oh, using this on a silver ring could turn it into any unique ring, including ones that are not silver rings. Oh, it literally uses that same example. That's kind of funny. Oh, I was like, why is that in my head? Because it was here. Okay, cool. All right. Rune of Creation. Another chase crafting item. This removes all the item's remaining forging potential and then duplicates it. So this is the mirror. I almost feel like they should make this look more epic to match the fact of what it does, that it dupes an item. Beyond being able to equip both copies in the case of things like rings and one-handed swords, this will have another use will become clear and they run up to 0.84. That might be some of the unique history, time travel, transforming item stuff, maybe, to give you multiple chances for that. So this is interesting, though, because it functions a little different to mirrors, because where a mirror locks the copy, this locks both. So what that means is that because it removes all the existing crafting potential, you can't then further change the item. So I don't know if you can use this on an item that already has 0 forging potential, or whether it has to have at least 1 left. But either way, in both situations, you're pretty much, the item is done, right? You can't really further change it like you can in Path of Exile. So in some cases, mirror services, they'll say, I can mirror this item for you, but if you want, I can replace this mastercraft, or I can do this, or I can change the colors, you know, in the example of sockets and stuff. Like, there's various things mirror services in Path of Exile can do, where they change the existing items so that the copy they make is more tailored to the person that wants to buy it. In this case, though, the original is much more locked. So, yeah, a little bit like splitting, but without the dividing of affixes. But yeah, locks both items. So if you can use it at 0, that means you can keep printing copies with more Runes of Creation. You just can't change the original. I wonder if you can use Rune of Creation on items that have already been copied. I imagine, like, it doesn't actually clarify here, and I'd like clarification on that, but I imagine it would make a lot of sense for it to require some craft forging potential. So you need to have at least 1 left on the item, because otherwise people can make a copy of your GG item with a Rune of Creation, and then they can use their own Runes of Creation to make further copies. So I'm thinking it has to use some forging potential that's left over in order to prevent that situation from happening. Yeah, it sounds like you can't use the runes without crafting potential. That was kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, so I imagine that's the case. It's the thing that makes the most sense. So that means, yeah, it's a one and done. You can make 1 copy of an item and not further. If you could use them on 0 forging potential items, then you could make infinite copies, and people could make infinite copies of copies, unless they added some system to avoid that. But it sounds like that's probably not the case. This is the only chase glyph, the Glyph of Despair, and it has a particularly exciting effect. Whenever you use a shard to attempt to upgrade an affix while using Glyph Despair, there is a chance that the affix will be sealed instead of upgraded. A sealed affix moves to its own slot and cannot be modified further. However, this means that the prefix or suffix slot it previously occupied is now open and allows for another affix to be added, allowing you to craft 5 affix items. Wow. Okay. So I saw in chat people mentioning fractured mods, but it's not just that. It's like turning an explicit modifier into an implicit that's on the item, and then you can add more explicits to the item on top of that. So normally 4 affixes the limit. In this case, you can lock an item, turn it into an implicit, and then craft another affix, giving a total of 5. That is mental. Yeah, that's very strong. Yes, that's a huge chase one right there. The sealed affix cannot be modified further, so you're probably going to want to try that on going from tier 4 to tier 5, I imagine. So the one but even locking a tier 3 affix is still very good, because it's ultimately a 5 affix instead of a 4 affix item is very strong. So yeah, the big chase pimped out character is going to have 5 affix items across their character, which across all the gear slots in last Epoch, that's like an extra 2 item slots worth of affixes. So that's a huge amount of extra power. That's pretty interesting. Damn. We see, yeah, here we go. So the minion health has been locked in down the bottom here. And then they've got 4 other affixes. Sick. Very cool. Missiomatic, thanks for the 3-month sub. Another change to the crafting system in 0.8.4 is that you can now see the outcome of your crafts. This display is positioned at the bottom of the crafting panel, where various fracture chances used to be displayed. It tells you what the stats you gained from a craft and how much forging potential was lost, if any. I like that because it was a little bit hard to see what happened sometimes. So this gives you a much more clear what happened. So you gained 11% increased melee attack speed and lost 2 forging potential. So more clarity in the crafting process there. That's cool. We've got a nice axe getting crafted here, by the way. It's an exalted physical, tier 6 physical, with tier 5 melee attack speed that they just landed, tier 5 health on hit, and tier 2 shock. Nice. Affix is maxed. It still has 19 forging potential. Wow. So they're going to be able to get that shock chance pretty high, I imagine, then. Huzzah. Very good. So that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm glad you encouraged me to have a bit more detailed read through that chat, because there was some stuff that I had misunderstood in my brief skim. Very cool. So huge change to the crafting system. To a crafting system that was already very powerful, but that some members of the community and the devs had kind of been like, you know, there's some stuff here that maybe could be better. So the fact that they have at this juncture gone back and reworked the crafting system so fundamentally is pretty cool. And yeah, the devs have been very responsive to feedback and community discussion and stuff. So very cool. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. So it's a big patch with big druid reworks, new skills. There's also a few other things in here, including spears getting some reworks, which I love to see. Spears are one of my... Oops, I'm lagging. Internet. So spears are one of my all-time favorite weapons in ever. But I always feel like they're super underrepresented in action RPGs and RPGs in general. So I like to see some improvements to spears. But this is about making the base items much bigger, much more interesting, and a bit more impactful as well. So they've gone through some examples here. We've got the Sun Spear, which has a high amount of physical and fire damage, as well as the crit chance built in. So item implicits can be pretty major in Last Epoch, actually. Can be rather huge. It's not like where every spear is just base physical damage, and then you occasionally have something that's a little different between them. They can be very fundamentally different. The Trident here is pure physical with big crit multi. We got an Ice Spear, which is, as you would expect, no physical damage, but rather pure cold damage with crit chance. Also, crazy new models, eh? They look like uniques, and these are just base items. Like, these ones look like what you'd expect a unique to look like. Oh, Roivo, thanks for the sub, mate. Coiled Bident. Melee physical damage with poison and poison damage. So heavily poison-oriented spear. We got Big Fizz with crit chance and fire resistance. So Dragon Slayer glaive with big fire res. Cool. Deicide Lance, God Killing Lance, oh my lord. Elemental Penetration, physical penetration and melee physical damage. So good for either pure Fizz builds or conversion builds. Or elemental if you're getting sufficient elemental, but probably conversion more likely. So looks like some pretty potent implicits and differences between different base types here for spears. So these look like, these are, I think, all higher level ones, I imagine. Require level 46, 51, 63. Yeah, these are higher level spears. 56, 76, 82. Yes. So these are kind of like your like end game spears for the most part, depending on your build. Zilch, thanks for the 94-month sub, mate. Thank you. Yes, a lot of people are waiting for the multiplayer update, and hopefully we get some more news on that soon. They have been mentioning kind of roughly when we might be expecting that. I don't know what the latest update on that is, but it's a big thing. And I imagine it's going to be very shaky at first as well. But I've been talking to the devs quite a bit about that in the past, about like what their plans for trading and stuff like that are, because I find that super interesting. Like, how do you implement trade into a game like this that has such a powerful crafting system? Because that's a super interesting question. So we've got spear reworks and new sentinel models as well, so new character models, making things look a little cooler. And a new skill called Upheaval as well. Sunders the ground in a line in front of you, dealing damage to enemies along its path. Yep, Sunder. How does it look, though? It is indeed Sunder, but there is an ice version of the skill as well, it looks like. So you can convert it to ice. There is a bit of overlap in skills. Oh, here we go. Here's the ice version. Oh my god. Glacial Cascade. Also, it summons a totem. Cool. Tectonic Slam. That's familiar as well. So that turns it into more of like a ground slammy style radiating outwards. Or it looks like maybe multiple branches. That's cool. This is all the same skill too, by the way. That's kind of the way they do things. They take one skill and then through the skill tree you can turn it into almost completely different skills in some cases. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, there's still some rough edges on last Epoch, but it's getting better and better, and I'm really been impressed with the quality and girth of the updates. So that's the news. The janky, poorly researched Ziggy news.